Hey there. Hello. Welcome, everybody. We are here for today's Skill Up session from the DevOps Institute and PeopleCert. It's also powered by Techstrong. I'm Mitch Ashley, and of course, I get an email notice as soon as we start. I'm Mitch Ashley, CTO at Techstrong, and today we're talking about how chaos engineering transforms testing in DevOps workflow. So not just chaos engineering, but also how does that fit into an overall workflow toolchain process of delivering software. So I have the distinct pleasure this morning of being joined by, let me bring off this here slide. There we go. Um, Sabi Badrwa. Sabi is, well, I'll let you introduce yourself. And why don't you tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about yourself, and also your background, kind of how you came to chaos engineering as part of your DevOps and QA.
yeah. Thanks, Mitch. Good morning to everybody who has joined. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Sabi. I have more than 25 years of IT experience. As everybody, I started as a developer, then got as a dev lead. I did a couple of BD roles before moving into operations for a couple of years. Last more than a decades, I've been leading QA practices. The recent in a large custody bank, US-based bank, I am setting up a QE engineering practice for blockchain testing, where we did some implementation of chaos engineering, and that's something I'm going to talk about. I am agile Scrum coach. I've done Safe 5 SPC. I do a lot of talking as a speaker and white paper. That's about me. I do cycling and some trekking in the Himalayan range when there's nothing else better to do. That's about me, Mitch.
Awesome. Hopefully, you're not doing any chaos engineering while you're cycling. That could be hazardous. So, don't try this at home, only at work. All right, great. And just a little bit of my background. I come from doing product development for cloud services, SaaS applications, early internet kind of stuff, and security applications, actually. So I have quite a bit of experience running engineering teams and delivering products, but I also run IT and worked in the business world as well. So, Sabi, why don't we start with, in our industry, we have the benefit of, or curse, of getting new terms all the time, right? That you're kind of like, what's that? I'm really interested. Let me find out about that. Now, chaos engineering isn't like brand new. It's been around for a while, but sometimes it gets a little muddled about what exactly do these things mean because people have different interpretations or it gets co-opted and used. One of the first things I do is kind of check Wikipedia or some other resource like that and say, okay, what are people saying this is, and is that my definition? So I thought we'd work up a kind of a, just between you and I, a working definition, and then we can use that for our conversation today. Before I do that, I want to just ask everybody to jump into chat and please tell us where you're joining from today. We're certainly glad to have you here. We generally have a very international audience, people from all over the world. And also, something we like to do is engage with you in chat. We'd love to hear your comments, reactions, thoughts. I liked what Sabi said. I didn't agree with Mitch here. Here's my thoughts on this. Or I have a question and I want to pose a question. You can do that there in the Q&A tab on the software. So please jump right in. And actually, by doing that, you'll help shape our conversation and guide and steer some of the things that we'll talk about, because we'll try to get at everybody's question, and almost always do. So for a working definition, Sabi, one of them that I looked at is it's the process, chaos engineering process of testing a distributed computing system to ensure that it can withstand unexpected disruptions. Sorry, it's early where I am. I know it's late where you are. Another definition is discipline of experimenting on a system in order to build confidence in its ability to withstand turbulent conditions in productions, in production. And I take that. I've always thought of chaos engineering as creating unexpected, unknown conditions before, and to see how resilient a system can respond, right? Not only can it stay up because it can recover from something that might have a process that might have stopped, or a connection that ended, or overload on this part of the system, etc. So, if you would, why don't you add from your perspective to that, or do you think that in and of itself is a pretty good definition? Yep. Are you there,
Mm,
Sabi? Can you hear me?
yes, now can you hear me? Yeah, the
Yes.
system was a bit delayed. Yeah, I think pretty much I agree what you said, Mitch. Just a few pointers. As I feel, chaos engineering is more like a discipline of experimenting with software systems in production to build confidence in the systems, to ability to withstand or troubleshoot unexpected condition. Now, when we talk about chaos testing, chaos testing is nothing but crashing your production test systems purposefully, trying to see what kind of issues it comes, can it rebuild itself, and things like that. So, predominantly the same thing. One is more of the philosophy, and I think the chaos testing, if we may call it, is more like a tool which will allow you to do that. Possibly
Mhm.
that's how I put it. Yeah.
Agree. I agree. And also in a testing context, I've heard the term used fairly frequently of fault testing. Think of it as creating faults in the system. Generally,
Yeah.
fault is something pretty serious, right? It's not a normal error
Absolutely.
that you typically expect to recover, and seeing what it does. And when you combine engineering with testing, it isn't just sort of randomly trying things. I mean, yes, you could do that too, but you're trying to measure what's the impact, and then what is the recovery? How long does it take? Does it fully recover? Are there areas that could be you could go back and re-engineer to help it be a little bit more tolerant of those kind of situations? So good. I think we're in the same ballpark on uh, on where we're coming from with chaos engineering. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your journey to moving into chaos engineering as part of your QA practice, and how you came to that, why you decided to do it, and maybe some of the hopes you had about the benefits of doing chaos engineering.
Yeah, so there are two parts to the question, Mitch. So the first part is, as I was introducing myself, I got an opportunity to start a QE practice for blockchain testing in a large US-based custody bank. So one of the things we had to do was to do testing of the entire private permission blockchain thing, and one of the things that was required to test is that what happens if one of the nodes of the five nodes which are live goes down, how does it behave? So we had to build that particular let's say chaos testing into it, wherein randomly it picks one of the node and brings it down, and we try to see whether it goes seamless. Is there any impact? Does it affect the system by any way? And that was very important for us to test. And not only that, we had to randomize how we are testing it, because in real life situation you don't know whether node 1 will fail and then node 2 or anything would fail. So that was definitely one of the things that we did. The other thing which was very important as part of chaos engineering we did was about concurrency testing. Now we were just started up building the blockchain network. It was a hyperledger based SU, though it was just release 0, but we still added in our DevOps pipeline concurrency testing. And what it does was, it is nothing but a load test. We were building these APIs, and with these APIs we were putting up the loads. And to our disbelief, we actually found close to 21 defects at the early part. And when we did a number crunching, how much it has saved us, that we found these defects very early part in, say, release 0. It came somewhere around 1 million USD that we saved. Had we not found it there, and we left it into production, and we found it in production, and the amount, as you know, the defect fix, the farther from unit testing, the more cost it involves. So it was somewhere coming to around 1 million USD that we saved by doing it very early part of it. So definitely that was there. So if I have to kind of sum up The advantages of chaos testing or engineering it at my practice, definitely one was it improved system resilience. That was one.
Hmm.
The second was about the enhanced customer experience. Since we were doing this load test or a concurrency test, we made sure that when the concurrent users are there, there is no degradation of the system. Faster time to market. We were fixing the defects very early and it was going to the market. And cost saving, as I mentioned, we did some number crunching and we found that close to 1 million USD was saved by doing that. So these were some of the advantages, Mitch.
Very good. Very good. Very comprehensive, like how you got here description. That helps a lot. One of the things you said, and a lot of great things you said in your path to chaos engineering and some of the benefits you're looking for, you used the word systems. And what I was thinking about is chaos engineering isn't just about the system under test. It's you may have a cascading effect, right? Of
Absolutely.
some errant condition that one system might stand up against or be able to recover from, or resist serious consequences from, but others fall down in the process, whatever that means, lose data, crash, etc. There could be a lot of outcomes. So it isn't because there's so much interdependency between all of our applications and services, databases, apps we have on prem or in the cloud, third-party services, credit card processing or whatever it might be in our web app, all kinds of different things. And any one of those, let's say that goes down, and I suddenly can't process those, and my backup option doesn't work. Like, what do we do then? What do we present the customer? How should we handle? And I just had an experience the other day where we had a fault like that we'd not anticipated. So we went back and looked and said, this is how we could make it easier to stand up when that does happen, and kind of prevents any data being lost and things like that. When you think about it from a systems perspective, does that? I mean, you're doing. You said you're doing blockchain, which is a distributed in and of itself, distributed system. I'm curious, how do you think about chaos engineering in a blockchain context? I know that isn't just about what our webinar is today, but I'm really curious, where your headspace is about that.
As you rightly said, see, whether it's a blockchain testing or it's a normal portal testing or it is anything, I think the concept remains the same. You introduce defects, you try to break it to see how the systems will behave in a real world. So it doesn't matter. There were a couple of things that we had to do specific to blockchain was because it was peer to peer and there were nodes. So we had to make sure that we pull down one the node and system doesn't have any adverse effect. It continues because in blockchain, the data is transparently available at all the nodes. So even if you make a change in a node, it gets transferred into all the nodes. So it shouldn't break. So those were a couple of nuances that we validated as part of our chaos engineering, that we were trying to do that to make sure it is working. And I think when we say systems, possibly we did all the layers. We did the application layer testing, we did the underlying OS, and we also did the infrastructure to make sure that all should stand by. As
Hmm.
you rightly said, your application may be strong enough to handle, the architecture could be strong, but maybe there is a problem in OS or there is a problem in the infrastructure. So you got to take that into consideration about that. Yeah, though we were doing it on AWS cloud, so we didn't have too much of infrastructure issues.
Hmm.
Possibly that was working, but we did make sure that we validated all those parameters as well.
Very good. It might even give you a little more flexibility, I think, doing it in the cloud, right? In terms of
Yeah, absolutely.
swapping out resources, increasing starving resources, whatever it might be that happens.
Yeah.
There
Just a side note, today if you go back to your management and say that you want to do in prem kind of testing or something, you would have to give more justification why it is in prem and not on cloud, unlike maybe 3 years 4 years down the line when you had to give more justification why you want to go in cloud. Things have
Mhm.
changed now. So that was the reason that we never could even think about in prem. We had to go with cloud with cloud, and that was the only option available.
Yeah, you often have a little more flexibility there too. There's a great question, Quality put in, one of our participants in the audience today, kind of related a little bit to what you're talking about. Is chaos testing done in production environment or in a lower environment? I assume by lower he means testing or something to that effect. What's your experience with
See,
people
we
putting
cannot
it
do it
in
on
production?
production. Absolutely, we cannot do on production because production is where in life things will go bad. So I mean, as a tester, I'm not allowed to touch the production. So I would try to do it on a replica of a production, maybe a pre-prod as we call it. But you generally start with the system integration or a unit test environment. Try it there, then do it in pre-prod before it goes into production. So my experience says that we don't do it in production, but it depends. There may be some organization where they create some FUT or friendly user testing. Possibly they can do chaos testing there, but I would strongly recommend to do in a replica of a production or a pre-prod. That would be my take. What do you say, Mitch?
I think obviously things in production take a lot more considerations to do it. One of the things is the sort of built-in recovery and fault tolerance resilience that you have built into your application or the architecture and
Hmm.
the infrastructure that it's running on. I'm thinking about going back to Netflix days and Chaos Monkey, and the idea of turning off video streaming servers or crashing them to see if it recovers and fails over. There's an architecture that's designed to do that. There's an
Yeah.
architecture that leverages caching of video, so there is time to bring up a backup or a standby server or one that just spins up from scratch. There's serverless options, right, that can instantaneously bring up parts of your application. So if you're running kind of a traditional stack, right, and you haven't gone to thinking about all the distributed implications and what you do to make your application resilient, it's a great way to test it, test environment. I wouldn't be throwing
Yeah.
your chaos monkey or whatever your chaos engineering and testing looks like. So it's like everything, it all depends, but I think you want to make sure you've gone through the steps you have
Yeah.
before you start turning things loose in production. And I would only do it
Absolutely.
on small parts, edges of it. So the whole
Yeah.
thing is not going to come down.
Yeah, that's possibly the FUT testing we sometimes do before we do a switch on, switch off type of thing. Whenever you have a release into production, you get this window wherein you can do some of your testing before you switch on those functionalities to the customer, or possibly you pick up a time, let's say Friday late evening till, let's say, Monday early morning. You take a maintenance window, and in that you would run those tests.
Mhm.
And yeah, if it's Netflix or Amazon where they have this chaos monkey, they possibly do it in production also. Yeah, that depends upon the maturity of the organization. Yeah, agree.
My criteria is: would it be a career-ending move if I did that in production? Well, that'll tell you if you're ready.
Yeah.
I wouldn't advise doing that unless you want to change careers for some.
And that's a lovely point. Absolutely.
And thank you, Qualdeep, for your question. Please, other folks join in. Love your questions here. Um, so maybe you talked about some of the advantages and disadvantages, or advantages and benefits, sorry, of chaos engineering, and you're taking it from the perspective of how chaos engineering flows as part of your testing strategy, right? Sometimes people think of chaos engineering like it might be something that an SRE does outside of the normal workflow and testing, pipeline of code going through its process to eventually get into production. Um, is it because you're a QA person and you naturally think about how this fits in the flow that you didn't keep it external, or you think there's benefits to doing as part of your workflow? So I'm curious your perspective about that, Sabi.
That's a good question. I definitely wear the hat of a QA for anything and everything. And yeah, I thought that, QA is one layer which makes sure whatever you are developing is let's say usable to the customer without much of the issues.
Mhm.
A QA would say that it goes into production with zero defect. There should not be in defect, but that's ideal. That's not practical. So I would
Mm.
like to build in as many scenarios as possible during the QA, identify them, fix them, rather than leaving it to production and finding it in the real time. So
Mhm.
definitely wearing that hat of a QA, I found it's the best place where you can put chaos engineering and run it through your regression testing or add it as an automation into your pipeline and get them fixed. And then you can definitely do a small, let's say, a set of those testing into production when you're trying to do that. So definitely it best fits there. But yes, if you're talking about a third party product that you have picked up into your organization, possibly external chaos testing might be a point that you need to look. So that would be my thought here.
Okay. Very good. We have a couple questions.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really relate to is we talk about not chaos, we talk about chaos engineering. In other words, to me,
Mhm.
that implies you're using some engineering discipline to it. And while, chaos monkey, to me, the name kind of comes from of, monkey hitting whatever buttons and just seeing what happens. And I think it's a little more disciplined than that. I mean, yes, you might do some things like that. I worked in an environment where someone wrote a process called Jaws. Nobody knew what it was, but what it did is go around and kill processes randomly and see what the recovery was. I mean, so you can, but then you need to be able to measure what happens and know that it happened and it was Jaws that killed it in that case, and that was a self-written script. We've got a couple questions coming in. Um, Sabi, one from Joe and one from Khalid, and and they're basically asking, "Hey, how do you bring in chaos engineering into the environment? How do you go to your manager and say, 'I'd like to really mess up our systems and see what happens?'" That's probably not how you have that conversation, but how do you introduce this into an organization, and where's the best place to do that?
Yeah, that's true. I wouldn't say that there is one right answer to that question. It depends upon organization and their risk appetite. There are organizations that I have seen who are quite high on taking the risks. Possibly they say that fair enough, let's do as less as possible. But there are some who want to make sure things are right and they want to fix that. Now, in my personal experiences, there are definitely pushback. That's one of the challenge to chaos engineering, which is people. There's a lot of pushback saying that really do we need to do this. There's a lot of lack of awareness, understanding, complexity and resource requirement. Definitely there is a cost involved to do chaos engineering. It doesn't come cheap. You
Mhm.
definitely need to do that. Resistance to change, a lot of resistance is there, like the example I mentioned where we did where for the blockchain, where we were trying to do the concurrency test very early part in release zero. There was a lot of resistance why we have to do concurrency or load test when it's just a release zero or MVP. I said, the early you find the defect, the better time you have to fix it. So you need to do that. Now, to the specific question, when should we start chaos engineering? The moment you are done with your MVP and you are into the first release, that's the best point. The early, the better. See, if you see the graph, which any tester shows, that the cost, where the cost is on the, let's say, y-axis and x-axis is the time. The defect which is found later in the SDLC life cycle, the cost goes up and it goes exponentially up. So if you find a defect during the early, let's say the sprint one or a sprint two, versus you find it in a release two or release three, the cost goes, let's say, 10 times, 20 times to fix it. So the early you find it, the better it is. So take that, do a cost benefit analysis, give it to your management and say, I want to start it early. I want to start it early and I want to put it as part of my automation pipeline as we did. Whenever there is a code change, whenever there is release, you run these chaos testing as part of that and come back with that. So I think there is a need to sell the idea of chaos testing, depends upon your management, but do that. And the early you start chaos engineering, the better it is. I really found a lot of benefits in doing pretty early, including we did crunching of the defects 21 we found, and we did some number crunching, and we showed back to management it saved 1 million USD. So I think that's where I take it. I'll take a pause. Mitch, your
Yeah.
thoughts.
One of the things I'm happen to doing a lot of research work in the topic of resilience. And one of the career experiences I've had is I used to call it the airline magazine. When my manager would come back and say, "We need to do DevOps," I'm like, "Okay, we read that on the airline and magazine." And I'm not sure it's that way anymore, but somewhere on the internet. Um, so resilience is a topic that's coming up more and more in organizations. And it is about kind of what chaos in one way, anyway, what
Mhm.
chaos engineering is about is our making our team not just uptimes, not just five nines, not just, underload, all of those things, but how do we plan for the unexpected, and also how do we plan for continuous change, because it's not going to stay the same, especially if you're doing microservices and pushing things into production more regularly. So my point in all this is, if one of the ways you can help sell it is try to differentiate it from the testing that you're doing, and saying, this is about resilience testing. This is about fault testing, things that we aren't doing today, but they build upon the things that they're doing today. In Khalid's question that was asked, he says, "Isn't this the existing load and UAT testing processes that we're adding kind of the same value to it?" My thought is, I think it's in addition to, um, and you want those first, right? I mean, your system will handle underload, or there's your first chaos test. What are your thoughts on that, Sabi?
Sorry, I was reading a question. Could you just repeat what
Yeah,
was your point?
no
Yeah.
problem. Yeah, we're always kind of doing two things in chat and talking at
Mhm.
the same time. I'm curious. Do you How do you differentiate chaos engineering from things like normal existing load and UAT testing that we already do? Why is it
Yeah,
different?
yeah. Actually, that's a good question, Mitch. When we do a normal testing, we do it against a particular requirement. So there is a requirement which I have been given by my BA or a product owner or something like that, or a user story against which I do my testing, right? So user story one, this is my testing I need to complete, whether it's functional or NFR load testing or something. In load testing also, I'll be given a requirement. But when it comes to chaos engineering, and this is my take, there is no requirement. I wouldn't get from a product owner or from uh, a business analyst saying that, randomly just go and check whether, what happens if you break down this or break down that. He's not going to give. So I think the first differentiation and the key differentiation is you don't get a requirement for chaos engineering.
Mhm.
It's predominantly more your ability, or let's say your experience, or let's say your take, that there is a need to do chaos engineering here. And the reason for that is possible potentially to make sure that your system is resilient, and they are let's say future proof kind of thing. So that is definitely one of the key part which I think. I'll take a pause here. Mitch, what do you think?
Okay. No, I agree. And I think, well, there might be not be a requirement on the front end. What you want
Yeah,
on the back end is where you find things, what the potential impact of that is, and the measures or the steps that you took
absolutely.
to address
So
that. So
these
you
are,
want to
yeah.
show the benefits of what you're doing, right? So it isn't just random stuff and nobody ever knows what happened, right? You want to quantify what you found and how you addressed it.
No, no, obviously it is. It's more, it's not, maybe it's not an explicit one. These are the implicit requirement which everybody is wants to know about it. And possibly you go back and show these things as part of chaos engineering that you have done, and these are the benefits that you have brought in. I think that's the key takeaway which the management would be looking for. Yeah.
Just get ahead of the game. So when that manager airline magazine moment happens, you're ready. You're already like, oh yeah, we've been working on this. How we might do this. Let me talk about how we'll go. How our ideas
A-
how we go
And
forward.
trust me, 3 months down the line, they would come back and say, "Hey, these guys were trying to do that, and we didn't find a value. But today, 3 months down the line, I see a lot of value in doing that."
Or the
And it happened
consulting
in
came in
my
and said we
case.
should do it. So
It
now
happened in my case, wherein I was getting a lot of pushback saying, why you're raising so many defects. It's too early. And 3 months down the line, they came back and say, these guys did a good thing. They made sure that we fix everything as part of this. So,
yeah.
so there's always the other. Yeah.
Sometimes we're not ready for whatever information, and then when we get the right
Mhm.
context or education about it, we are. One of the questions I want to go to is maybe you can talk about how chaos engineering improves the overall quality of software and applications. Is it affecting quality in ways that we think about quality measurements today?
Yes, I think. Let me put it that way for the quality part. Yes. So chaos engineering is definitely helps identifying the weakness and the vulnerability in a system. When system means it could be application, it could be the infrastructure, and that allowing team to proactively address them. Now, by intentionally introducing these failures, teams can uncover hidden issues, improve fault tolerance, and enhance the overall resilience of the software and application. So because you are introducing these failures, and you uncover hidden issues, improve the fault tolerance, and possibly that is where it improves the overall quality of the software. As I was giving an example in my case where we did find some of these defects quite early in the game. Just 3 months down the line, the user came back saying that he's happy now because now he knows that the system can take so much of load, and there is no issues like concurrency when I'm trying to run these tests, or functionality is working fine. So definitely it improves, and I think that's the key takeaway, that it improves a lot when it comes to quality, and that's something that you can actually quantify also, and share that. Yeah.
You can also think about it, I mean, and this may be a part of what you're saying too, is
Hmm.
in validation of user experience requirements, right?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
is the experience we're trying to deliver to the end user? And if it takes 10 minutes for this thing to recover from some kind of fault, that's not going to lead to a great experience. So quality, there's all kinds of measurements of bugs and defects and fixes and how long mean time to recover, all those kind of things. There's also what's the experience to the end user, to the
Yeah.
customer, person sitting on the other end of an API or the other end of a mobile app or web app, whatever it might be. And is that when things happen, things kind of hit the fan, what's the impact to them? I love the error message that pops up and says an error has occurred. Hit okay.
Mhm.
That's all that it tells you, right? Please don't do that. Anyway, one of my pet peeves. There's some really great questions, and thank you everybody for the fantastic questions that we're getting. Um, One of the questions, Sabi, is how can we justify work in the context of adding chaos engineering, which is not part of the original scope of the work or from the requirements perspective. So I don't know if chaos engineering was like in your core requirement spec for your project or not, but what do you do if it's not?
As I think we discussed, Mitch, I think you also mentioned we have to go back and show the benefits it possibly brings in. And today, chaos engineering has a lot of literature available, and there are case studies wherein other organizations, Netflix, Amazon, you talk about these big names, they have put chaos engineering as part and parcel of their pipeline. So possibly that could be one route wherein you can showcase what other organization has seen the benefit of having the chaos engineering. That could be one. And the second could definitely be the awareness that you need to build in within your organization. You could become the ambassador of the chaos engineering, and maybe do some roadshow or brown bag sessions, show them that this is there. You can also do some piloting with the certain areas, some of the things, introducing some defects, trying to find how, what's the degradation of the system, or how where you can fix it. So possibly you'll have to try one or multiple of these options, and introduce this chaos engineering into your organization. But in today's world, there was one, I was reading through one report. Let me see if I have that handy with me. And that report was talking about, I think that was a Gartner's report of 2022, and it said that 40% of the organization would have implemented chaos engineering practices as part of their DevOps workflow by 2022, and we are already in 2023. That means the 40% must have gone up by, let's say, close to 50%. That means there are already 50% of the organization which, Gartner says, are already have introduced chaos engineering into their workflow. So I see there's a lot of buy-in. You just need to put few things together and sell it to your sell it to your management. If there is some bit of resistance, that's what I would say.
That
I'll take a pause here. Yeah.
that's a really good point. There's nothing that says this is valid and we should be doing it than taking a quote from a Gartner report or a Forrester Wave, you know, a, a matrix. It's sort of the everybody else is doing it, but it's said in a way that industry experts are saying this is where we're headed. Maybe that's something we should start working on or thinking about how we might do. It's a bit of safe cover that
Yeah.
whenever you I like to say nobody ever reads analyst reports except when they're putting their budget together and they need a quadrant and a quote. And then they'll go pull that out of an 80-page report, right? That's a lot of how that information. That's not totally true. People do read them, but a lot of us pull that information, to serve other purposes, to help in kind of getting things funded, et cetera. So there's kind of a related question about, being a non-functional requirement. Um, the chaos engineering, yeah, it is. I think, but you can tie it back to quality. You can tie it back to user experience. You can tie it back to um, uptime and system performance. You could make it a performance metrics. There's ways to, instead of it being in a standalone, we don't know what it is, but it tries stuff and we find out if things break. Make it part of your program, part of your strategy, whether it's your testing strategy or user experience. It's a lot easier to get things funded, justified under an umbrella of what you're already doing than to go try to get something new that nobody's ever heard of. And I'm not saying you don't say platform engineering, but it's easier to make it part of what you're already doing that's going to enhance the results that you're getting. Make sense to you, Sabi?
Yeah, I think Kawaldeep's question is quite spot on. I mean, chaos engineering is not just the NFR. I think NFR could be one part of it, but I think it is
Mm,
bigger than that. It is much
okay.
more broader than that. And I think you are perfectly fine, right, to say that chaos engineering will make the system not only reliable but resilient also. So yes, absolutely spot on, Kamaldeep. That's what I would say to you.
Okay, good. We talked about sort of using the analyst information to help us validate what's happening. It isn't like only Netflix has done this. This is a long history, from Facebook Storm to Microsoft and Amazon, of course, itself on its main infrastructure. Google. I mean, a lot of us learned about these things from kind of Google's writing up about it. Platform engineering being one of the other ones that's come from that. As you've studied obviously what's happening in the industry. Appreciate your perspective about what other companies are doing around chaos engineering.
Yeah, so I was quite interested when we started a few months. So on my free time, I did some kind of research into some of these big names to see. So I did pull up some of them, like for example, Netflix. We discussed about Chaos Monkey. I think they do that. It's like a tool which randomly goes and terminates instances to see how the systems, how the environment will behave. Amazon has the chaos engineering through what they call it as a game day. It's a game day that they celebrate, wherein during that exercises, teams simulate real world failures, incidents,
Mhm.
to test the resilience of the system. So Amazon has game day. Google call it DIRT, which is DIRT, disaster recovery testing. So they call it DIRT, and they kind of intentionally inject failures, disruptions into their system, and they have been doing for a couple of years, I would say, maybe a decade. Microsoft calls it a chaos studio initiative. They stimulate various failure scenarios to test resilience in their Azure cloud platform, and that helps them to identify the vulnerabilities and improve the overall reliability of the services. You talk about LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn also has a chaos engineering, and they have a tool that they call it as a Simian Army that injects failure disruptions into their production system. So I was just curious, and I found most of these big names, the Fortune 500s, let's say Fortune 100s, have one or the other way that they build in chaos engineering as part of their BAU, I would say. I'll take a pause here. Yeah, over to you,
Yeah.
Mitch.
My next program I want to start it is like a Sauron's army, something from Lord of the Rings. It's cool.
True,
Um,
true.
good stuff. Let's talk about the approach of actually implementing and doing it. There are a lot of products on the market, a lot of good products. Some that have been around for a while, and some new technologies as well. There's also, there's open source. There's doing it yourself. And I know you took a specific approach. Talk
Mhm.
about the doing it yourself approach and where that might be appropriate, or kind of what your experience from doing that is.
Yeah, yeah, good question, Mitch. So maybe mine was not a general case. We were starting up blockchain, let's say, to start with, and this QE or quality engineering practice was also new. We were in the release zero, release one, and we were planning to go live next year. And so for us, it was making more sense to build it ourselves rather than buying a tool, because we had some time in hand, and we were still away from being into production. So we built it up. We already had a Python based automation test framework, and in that we added all the chaos engineering that we can put as part of our pipeline, and then we ran it release after release. And so we did it as more of a custom build solution. But you're right, there are tools in the market. While I have not used, but there is Chaos Monkey we talked about. There is Germalan, there is Pumba that I've heard of. While I've not used them, but I know that these tools are there which can help organization to quickly adopt chaos engineering into their practices. So they are helpful. So I think it depends where you are in the SDLC. If you have a product which needs to quickly go into operations and you want to run chaos engineering without much time, then possibly one of these standardized tool might help you. And I think there are some open source tools also that they can use.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
certainly is a valid way to kind of get started, kind of dip your toe in the water too. You had a, a greenfield situation, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times you don't have that,
Correct.
unless you're a new product development or you're doing a startup or something. So, adding it to your testing strategy or elements of it, right? Um, as a step into it, and then maybe you can, from that point, validate if you think a product is going to help you moving down that
Absolutely.
path. Okay. Um, I'm just trying to think about. So there's some other topics that we wanted to cover is adoption of chaos engineering and real world companies that are implementing chaos engineering as part of the DevOps workflow. So put it in the context, not just chaos engineering, but how does it fit into a DevOps workflow itself? So it isn't this sort of side project that happening over here and nobody knows about. It's part of just how we build, create, and release software.
I think it should currently. The way I see, And when I talked about the examples of the Netflix of the world or the Amazons of the world, it's not a secret project. I think for them this is very publicly open, and they run it more like a fun game, or let's say it's more like a experimentation, or it's more like a hackathon kind of event that they do.
Hmm.
And We also in our organization did more like a hackathon, particularly in the QE practice where I was. I had done more like an hackathon practice where we were trying to build in these new scenarios of breaking the system and trying to see how it behaves, loading it to beyond the parameters which they are, to see how it is testing, trying to do multiple requests, or bringing down the node randomly. Just pick one node, bring it down. Before the first node comes up, bring another node down, bring it to the n minus one node and see how it's behaving. So for me, it was more like an hackathon, and it was very publicly done, and nothing secret about it. So I think most organizations are maturing and they are understanding the value of it, and they are making it as part of their SDLC and part of their pipeline, and they are reserving some time within the project where they can run these tests, automate it, and make it part of their automation pipelines, I would say.
Hmm. One of the things that also comes up with chaos engineering is in the vein of like doing sensible chaos engineering, not like
Hmm.
bringing everything down
Yeah.
and causing major catastrophe. Is think about the blast radius of what you're doing, right? So if you're going to do a hackathon or day of chaos or whatever you want to call it, or you're automated as part of your regular
Release cycle.
testing, yeah, and your release cycle, is think about what are the potential impacts of a failure in this area, what might cascade, and if we do experience a failure in that, especially if you're testing in production, um, what's the worst could happen right now? It could be worse than that because you obviously don't understand for completely what the impact could be. But um, I wouldn't want to go to the one database that can't go down, and let's go make it go down and see what happens in production, right? Let's work up to in testing and in other environments
Uh,
for how we do that. Any thoughts on sort of blast radius considerations?
I remember one of the I think we were having some discussion on a similar lines in our organization, and one of our learned friend mentioned that nuclear bombs have been developed, and they test those nuclear bombs also, right? It's the ultimate catastrophe it can bring in. I don't think there is anything bigger or worse than that, but that's also been tested, right? They test it in a controlled environment to see, and then they extrapolate those figures. Same happens with chaos engineering. Possibly you do it in a very controlled environment. If things doesn't, then what you need to pull, what you need to bring it up, and things like that, and then possibly you do some kind of extrapolation on that. So yes, you do that, and you know what you're trying to do. There is a control environment. You have the support guy sitting next to it, that if it doesn't come up, what's the next thing they need to do. Possibly you're doing it in a maintenance cycle, you're doing it when the traffic is the least, if it is happening in production, maybe a Friday evening to Sunday morning, and then you call out to your customer that it's a maintenance window where we are going to test few things, which happens. So I think that's where it is. Yeah, if you have not tested it properly, and you end up in a situation that you don't know and the systems are not coming up even after the maintenance window, yes, then that could cause catastrophe. And as you said, first test it in your test environment, your pre-prod, before you go into production. That's best it is. The more you prepare, the better you are, I would say.
Mhm. Great. If you can think about this for a moment, I want to talk about resources that are available to people to learn more, find out about what software is available, techniques and tools. One of the things I came across, it's been around a little while, was actually a site on GitHub. It's called Awesome Chaos Engineering. I put the link in the chat there for
Sure.
folks. But it's got things on books, kind of how you create the culture where this is okay, doing game days, and a ton of articles. I mean, you could just search through this and kind of to read it all would be a lot to read. But there's some really good books out there. You can also look at some of the ratings, like if you're checking it out on Amazon, courses that you can take, tools. We're talking about Chaos Monkey, but there's also Wire Monk and Mock Lab and Muxie and a whole bunch of different things that you can do. Cthulhu is one I really like the name of anyway. um, if you can see my sci-fi background. Um, but that's a great resource. Any resources that you like to reference or you think might be helpful for folks, Sabi?
Yeah, that's I mean, I haven't particularly gone into. I mean, I've been going across some of these reports of Gartner, and there was one report of year 2022, which was particularly about chaos engineering and particularly into the DevOps pipeline. I'll see if I can find that link and then share it offline. But there was one particularly there's where they talked about 40% of the enterprise already would be kind of implementing chaos engineering into that. So that's one good white paper that I got from Gartner. I'll see if I can find the link somewhere and then share it across. But that was one of the key one that I'd used. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to think we might have some resources on Techstrong research
absolutely.
that we could also reference.
There's
Um,
good courses on LinkedIn. I
mm,
remember now. There's a good courses on LinkedIn about chaos engineering and how you can implement that and all. I think there's some good courses on LinkedIn. Absolutely.
okay, good. Well, we're coming up on getting close to the top of the hour. If there are any other questions, topics, Joe says thank you. That GitHub page, I think he's going to be busy reading for a while because there's a lot
Mm,
of stuff on that. I don't know if I turn my manager loose on that, but you might find some good stuff there to go kind of help educate yourself as well as info.
mm.
And Gartner, of course, and
Yeah.
Forrester, other analysts are great resources as well. Let me just double check the questions here that we've gotten so far. I think we've answered most of those. Just double checking. Okay. All right. So let's do this as a wrap up. Love to have your thoughts on, when you first started looking into chaos engineering and knowing what you know now, what advice would you go back and give yourself, at that starting point? What kind of things have you learned from doing chaos engineering and might help others that are maybe a little bit earlier in their journey of adopting it?
Yeah, I think I don't regret the decision I have taken to introduce or adopt chaos engineering quite early part of my SDLC, and I will stick to that. I will take that as an experience, and next time when I am in a similar situation, I am definitely going to be an advocate of chaos engineering into my organization. That's definitely there. Definitely there was I could have done a little better in terms of awareness and understanding within the organization. Maybe that was somewhere I didn't do, but I would recommend strongly that make some awareness, do some brown bag sessions or lunch session where you talk about what chaos engineering is, what organizations are doing about it, bring them that inquisitiveness into them. Possibly they will say, hey, you were talking so much about chaos engineering, why don't you tell me how can we do it in our organization? Maybe a CIO or a CTO may put his hand on your back and say, go for it. I see there is a value in that. So definitely that's another thing. Don't think that chaos engineering comes free. There is a cost involved, there is a resource requirement, possibly there is a tool requirement that you need to do. So you need to make sure that you budget those costs into that. And definitely there will be a resistance, there will be a pushback, but I think there is a value in it, if not in short term, definitely in the long term. So I think one should persist, and one should continue with the journey so that they see a benefit for the organization. So that would be my takeaway or my recommendations or my lessons learned. Yeah.
Okay, very good, very good. Before I jump in with mine, I just posted a message, though I don't know how to spell the word demand, apparently. Um, this is being recorded, so this session will be available after today at any time to go view it. I think you just go to the same link and it will take you to the recorded version of this. So if you want to share it with others, you want to have your manager listen to it, whatever might be helpful to you. So this wasn't just a one-shot deal. What I would offer, Sabi, is it's when new things come along, whether it's microservices and cloud native architecture, or it's platform engineering, or it's chaos engineering, it's really easy to kind of dive into that domain and learn and figure out what you can do and how to use it and all of that good stuff. One of the things I've kind of lesson I've learned, to your point about helping socialize and educate the organization, is while we're learning the topic, maybe it's generative AI right now, right? Is pull back and say, okay, but what's the business outcome that I could potentially gain from this? Right? Is it resilience? Okay, well, what does that mean, and how do I quantify that? How can I tie that to an effort that we have around that? But think about the outcome of it. I mean, yes, we're trying to do this so that systems will stand up and be able to handle failure more gracefully. Okay, but why? Why is that important? And there may be parts of your systems, or you've had some history there, or lots of good things. But think about the outcome of what you would get from using chaos engineering, and make sure that's part of your story of what you're educating yourself and also communicating with the team and the organization. And I think it helps people know why you're doing it instead of what you're doing, and only knowing that. So that would my the words of wisdom, if there's any wisdom in there, to share with everyone. Well, this has been a great privilege. Really appreciate the opportunity to do this with you, Sabi, and thanks for joining us from our different parts of the world that we're both here for. And we also want to thank our audience. Thank you today for joining us. We do this because we love this technology. We love the business outcomes, but we even more so love working with others and helping others adopt this, understand it better, sharing experiences and more. So it's been a great privilege to do that with you, Sabi. I also want to let everyone know that next up for the People Cert programs is Best DevSecOps Practices for Maintaining Cloud Security. A lot of work in security and cloud and security and DevOps. So that's going to be on November 14th. The registration page is pinned in the chat if you want to go to find it there. Actually, in the handout section, I think is where you find it. There's a link there. Oh, actually, we've got it pinned at the top of chat. So click on that right now so you can go to it and fill out and sign up for that program. I think you'll find a lot of great information. There's some really good folks that are speaking on that. If Tracy Bannon is a friend of mine, Sean Mack, who wrote the DevSecOps playbook, a gentleman from CMA, etc. So a lot of good folks, an IBM person, James Leone. So I think you'll learn a lot of good information about DevSecOps and cloud security there. So please check that out. Again, thanks everybody. Sabi, it's been fun.
Thank you. Thanks, Mitch. Yeah, I'll take this, let's say 30 seconds just to thank you, Mitch, for a wonderful discussion. I think we had a lovely audience and a great questions, and I really loved answering and hearing the views and trying to, learn a few things from here. But it was a wonderful experience, and I would say the time was well spent. So thank you, everybody. Thank you.
You bet. And adding my thanks as well. Have a great rest of your day or beginning of your day, wherever you are. And hope you'll see you back again for our next People Cert Skill Up kind of session.
Yeah. Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody.